Hi, my name is Amanda Zhu, and today I'll be presenting about an extracurricular activity known as speech and debate. So, speech and debate obviously has two parts, and speech on its own and debate on its own are both pretty big umbrella terms, and under those fall different categories. So, specifically for speech, there are many different kinds, such as dramatic interpretation, duo, humorous, program oral, informative speaking, original oratory, and United States extemporaneous speaking. So first, let's start with dramatic interpretation, which is also known as DI. So these speeches are up to 10 minutes long, and they focus on the student's ability to convey emotion through their actions and diction, which is basically the way that they speak. And then they use a dramatic text, and no props or costumes are allowed, and the student can choose to portray as many characters as they want to. The next one is duo interpretation, and for these speeches, two students work together to deliver one performance, and this speech really focuses on the relationships and the dynamics between the two characters. Again, no props or costumes are allowed, and for this kind, the pieces can really be varying in terms of like what genre they are. For example, they can be humorous, dramatic, or they can be both, and it's really important for students to engage with each other through choreography, which is basically just the way that they move during their speech. And one other important thing to note is that partners aren't actually allowed to physically touch each other. Yeah. The next one is humorous interpretation, which is also known as HI, and these speeches are basically designed to display a student's ability through their timing, their delivery, and their character development. And again, students are allowed to portray one or more characters, and no props or costumes are allowed. And for these type of speeches, the goal is basically just to appeal to the audience and the judges in a humorous way. The speeches of this genre are pretty self-explanatory. It's just in the name. The next one is called program oral interpretation, which is also known as POI. So these speeches cannot be any longer than 10 minutes, and it really highlights the use of prose, poetry, and drama. And it really tests the student's ability to combine many different characters and many different genres of literature around one single theme that the student is allowed to choose. And basically, competitors will put together a manuscript, which is typically a small black binder with all of the speeches that the student is going to give combined to flow together easily. And the black binder is set up like a book. The next one is informative speaking. So for these type of speeches, students use evidence, logic, and visual aids, which are optional to inform their audience. And for these speeches, they're self-written, and they're typically about topics that students are really passionate about or topics that they believe will allow them to connect better with their audience. These speeches are about 10 minutes long, and they have to be memorized. The next one is known as original oratory. So these are self-written speeches as well, about 10 minutes memorized, and also on the topic of the student's choice. But these are similar to informatives, but the only difference is that they can either be informative or they can be persuasive, which informative speaking is not allowed to be. And the topics should usually be current events and pretty relatable for the audience and the judges. And OO speakers must engage the audience with their evidence, logic, emotional appeals, and sometimes through the use of humor. And the last type of speech is United States extemporaneous speaking, which is also known as USX. So these type of speeches, the competitors are presented with 3 different questions of their choice, and they're allowed to choose. And these questions are about current events in the U.S., and they're given 30 minutes to prepare a 7-minute speech about the topic that they chose. They're allowed to use articles and evidence that they found before the competition, but during the competition, they're not allowed to use the internet. The speeches are delivered from memory, and they typically involve political, economic, and foreign policy matters. So moving on to debate, there are also many different kinds of debates, as I said before. So Lincoln-Douglas debate, policy debate, public forum debate, congressional, and world schools, sorry. So Lincoln-Douglas debate, LD, is probably the most common one. It's a one-on-one debate, so basically students debate a topic that's given to them by the association, which is basically the speech and debate organization. These topics change monthly usually, and basically it's set up in a resolution type of sentence. So it's like set up so that it's a problem and the solutions are given to solve the issue. And the entire debate for Lincoln-Douglas lasts about 45 minutes, and it includes constructive speeches, rebuttals, as well as cross-examination. So the structure of LD is affirmative constructive. So this is a speech that's prepared by the affirmative side. Affirmative side is a side that supports the resolution, and negative does not. So affirmative constructive, then you have negative cross-examination, which is basically where the negative asks the affirmative questions and the affirmative must answer. Then you have the negative constructive speech, and at the end of that speech, they'll add their rebuttal against the affirmative's points. Then you have affirmative cross-examination, where the affirmative asks negative questions. Then you have first affirmative rebuttal, second negative rebuttal, and second affirmative rebuttal. So the rebuttal speeches are all basically, they come up with them on the spot against their partner's arguments. So typically Lincoln-Douglas debaters will prepare constructive speeches beforehand, and they'll research possible refutations or blocks against more common arguments. Then the next one is policy debate, which is also known as CX, and this is a 2-on-2 debate that focuses on one yearly policy question. And for policy debaters, the affirmative team will offer a plan to enact a policy, while the negative side will try to give reasons to the judges as to why the proposal should be rejected. So again, it involves constructive speeches as well as cross-examination. So the structure of policy debate, you have the first affirmative constructive speech, then you have negative cross-ex, then you have the first negative constructive, then affirmative cross-ex, then second affirmative constructive, negative cross-ex, second negative constructive, affirmative cross-ex, first negative rebuttal, first affirmative rebuttal, second negative rebuttal, and second affirmative rebuttal. So the next one is public forum debate, which is also known as PF. And again, this is a 2-on-2 debate where the teams will argue with each other about a given resolution, where one team supports the resolution and the other argues against it. And the structure of public forum debate is you have Team A, Speaker 1, give their constructive speech. Then Team B, Speaker 1, give their constructive speech. Then you have crossfire, where Speaker 1 from both teams will ask each other questions and answer them. Then you have Team A, Speaker 2 rebuttal, Team B, Speaker 2 rebuttal, crossfire, where Speaker 2 from both teams will ask each other questions and answer. Then you have Team A, Speaker 1 summary, Team B, Speaker 1 summary. So during the summary speeches, basically they will be trying to convince the judges. They'll be highlighting the main points to focus on and start narrowing down the debate. Then you have grand crossfire, where all 4 speech debaters will participate in asking each other questions. Then you have Team A, Speaker 2, final focus, and Team B, Speaker 2, final focus. So for these, the speakers basically emphasize why their team should win and why they are on the correct side. Next, you have congressional debate, which is also known as CD, and this is basically a simulation of the U.S. legislative process in the Senate and in the House. So in these types of debates, they generate a series of bills and resolutions to debate over. The structure, they basically alternate delivering speeches for and against the topic in a group setting, and they're graded and evaluated based on the students' research, their argumentation, their delivery, and their knowledge. The next one is World Schools Debate, which is also known as WSD. So this type of debate combines prepared motions with impromptu motions. So this type of debate really allows debaters to interact with each other even during speeches, and it really requires teamwork between members and quality argumentation. So WSD is 3-on-3. And just because it's 3-on-3, a team can consist of 5 members, but basically only 3 students will participate in each debate. So like I said before, the resolutions may either be prepared or impromptu. So if it's an impromptu motion, students aren't able to conduct any outside research, and they have to rely on their prior knowledge, a dictionary, and an almanac. And the structure of WSD, you have proposition team speaker 1, then opposition team speaker 1, proposition team speaker 2, opposition team speaker 2, proposition team speaker 3, opposition team speaker 3, then you have the opposition reply, and finally the proposition reply. And I forgot to mention, but for all of these types of debates, you'll have certain amount of prep time, which is basically the time that is given to you, allocated so that you can write your rebuttals or think of refutations against your opponent's arguments, for you to prepare your speeches, things like that. And it really varies depending on the type of debate that you're doing for how much time you get. For example, for policy debate, you get 7 minutes. For public forum, each team only gets 2. So yeah, I think that's really it. Thank you for listening. If any of you have any questions, feel free to email me at twteach@yahoo.com. Yeah, that's all. Thank you. Bye.